In today's class, we'll be discussing other concepts, very important concepts relating to extension administration. You will need to know that extension administration is not just operated without guides. So in this class, we expect at the end of the series that you should be able to list the guides to extension administration, discuss these guides effectively, and then highlight the conditions necessary for successful extension administration. I think that every extension officer, every extensionist should know the guides to extension administration, because you cannot do this assignment of being an extension administrator without knowing the guides. So we want to somehow place emphasis on this, that among all your learnings, you must learn the guides to extension administration. So let's discuss guides to extension administration. In this class, we're going to highlight about 5 major guides to extension administration. And we want you to know the 5 of them. There's no need of knowing one and leaving the other. It's good that you show yourself qualified and well equipped. The following are the principles and the guides of extension administration that apply to this course AEE 541. 1. The structure of an administrative organization is established in a subordinate superordinate hierarchy. Extension administration is set out on a subordinate superordinate. Remember, we said the subordinate is the one who is below, the superordinate is the one who is above. So each worker should know his supervisor. The supervisor is the superordinate, the supervisee is the subordinate. Now, each supervisor is also, within the context of extension administration, expected to supervise a person. Each member of staff within the extension agency should report to one and only one leader. Now, we want to also emphasize that this structure should be made flexible and modifiable. Plus, it's clear that no extension staff should be made to report directly to more than one supervisor. It's an important guide that you should not forget when you get to the field. Secondly, the authority delegated to an individual in an organization should be commensurate with the responsibility assigned to him. When we say responsibility here, we are looking at accountability for the performance of the duty. You don't give a high authority or give a powerful authority, delegate a powerful authority with lesser or inferior responsibility. Responsibility also, we know, cannot exist without authority. So responsibility cannot be delegated, but authority can be delegated. Authority is the supreme coordinating power within an organization. The third one is that effective administration occurs when authority and responsibilities assigned to an individual or group are clearly defined and understood. Instruction should not be muzzled up. A job description which clearly sets out the duties of each person and the degree of authority given is very crucial. Now, for benefit of doubt, job description here is a statement describing the duties of a worker. Worker A, you are to take charge of staff nominal role. That's job description. Worker B, you are to ensure that workers' welfare is adequately catered for. That's job description. Job specification is a statement that explains the minimum requirements of the staff qualification. Pick the difference here between job description and job specification. Job description is a statement describing the duties of a worker, while specification is a statement that explains the minimum requirements of the staff qualification. For instance, we say to be a university lecturer, you must at least have a PhD. That's the job specification. I hope there is no confusion herein. Now, the fourth one is that it's important that within the extension administration that a two-way channel of communication must exist for a meaningful administration of the system. If we must achieve meaningful administration, then we must establish a two-way communication process where there is a sender and then there is a receiver. That's one way. But then the two-way communication channel is made effective by the presence of feedback. So when the sender one sends to receiver one, out of the understanding the receiver one secures from the message from sender one, he sends a feedback. By virtue of sending the feedback, the receiver one becomes sender two, and then the sender one becomes receiver two. I think we discussed these things in agricultural extension communication in your 300 level. You may need to go back and do a recap. Now, aside having the two-way channel of communication, we must also ensure that the two-way approaches to communication should also be developed and maintained. Here in approaches, we are discussing the vertical and horizontal communication. Vertical communication will have to do with that communication between the subordinate and the superordinate and the subordinate. That's the vertical communication. Recall we also drilled this on the board during our physical meeting. Now, horizontal communication is that which happens among colleagues at their level. This must be maintained to develop desirable staff attitude and interest in an organization. Effective use of specialist knowledge in planning and implementing programs is very necessary. When we discussed the ADP organogram, all of you will remember that there is this point when we discussed the SMS, the subject matter specialist. Extension does not play with specialists. And whatever ideas, whatever innovations, whatever communication extension is trying to bring, they bring through specialists. So, one of the serious problems facing extension administration the world over is inadequate use of specialist knowledge in policy formulation, planning, and execution of programs. Extension administration requires specialist knowledge in various aspects of agriculture and extension services. These aspects will include crop, animal, forestry, aquaculture, women in agriculture, then farm records and management. Efficiency in extension administration depends on the extent to which specific issues recommended by specialists in different disciplines can be adequately addressed and controlled. Let's look at conditions necessary for successful extension. These conditions will include one, the extension service should be seen as an institution established for the purpose of assisting rural people through educational process to make maximum use of the available resources. Extension is not there to lord it over the rural people. Extension is there just to provide assistance to rural people, and this assistance is provided through educational process. Two, administrators should realize the need for the identification of sources of technological information to be used for the solution of problems for rural people. If extension administration must be successful, this particular issue should not be tampered with. Also, efforts must be made for auxiliary services such as transportation, veterinary services, and credit. The principle, that's the fourth one now, the principle of local involvement or participation in the planning of extension programs should be ensured at all times. There is the need for extension program planning and evaluation and implementation as well to be participatory. Recall that we've discussed the need to involve stakeholders, beneficiaries, clientele in whatever we are doing in extension. And one of the basic needs we mentioned is the need to sustain such extension programs. The fifth one is that there is need for organizing the educational and training methods to suit the skills, attitudes, abilities, knowledge, and resources of the people. Even when we are making effort to bring ideas, from wherever we deem necessary, these ideas must be adapted to such a pattern that is not too far from the existing practices of the beneficiaries. The next one is that there is need to establish institutions for the training of personnel required for the effective running of the extension service. Extension administrators and extension policy makers should develop an extension service adapted to the social realities and social organizations of the society that is being served. Extension education should be available to all rural people, irrespective of their race, creed, social class, or sex. Yeah, it is important that extension should not be discriminatory. Now, the last but not the least is that extension administration should regard extension education as the sharing of technical knowledge useful for solving recognized problems for rural people. If you're able to keep this in view as an administrator, then you can be very sure that your extension administrative role will be very successful. Thank you again. It's a pleasure to have you. Please do have great and blessed period.